students, in this video I am going to show you how to write proofs involving similar triangles. This is going to involve us using the AA postulate, the SAS postulate, and the SSS postulate. You should be doing proofs only after you have mastered how to identify those three conditions to prove similarity. There's a little bit of notation that you need to be familiar with similarity. And the first is, how do you write that the sides are proportional to each other? So you would write that AB over DE is equal to BC over EF. And if you had the third side, you can also put equals and then the third side. And that way you would be saying that those sides are proportional to one another. And for the angles, how do you state that they are congruent? You would say angle B is congruent to angle E. We're going to go through about 4 or 5 examples. Example number 1. You are given that AB over DE, that ratio is equal to AC over DF, and that's equal to BC over EF. That's what this information is. I just color coded it. And they want you to prove that this triangle is similar to triangle DEF. Well, if you know your postulates, you know that you have enough. Once you know that all three sides are proportional, then they are similar by the side postulate. How do we write this proof? The proof always starts with the given information. So since you were given these three, you would write that as your statement, and you know this because it's given to you. You can automatically go to your proof statement now because you know that your proof statement is true by the SSS postulate. Here's another example. You are given that JI is parallel to KH. That means this line is parallel to this line. And we talked about this situation in class. These are transversals, which would make these angles congruent because they're corresponding, and these angles congruent because they're corresponding. How do you write the proof? And and you're trying to prove that the triangle JGI is similar to KGH. The first thing you do is you write down your given information. So you are given that the lines are parallel, you write that down, and you know that they're parallel because it's given. From the given statement, you actually know that these angles are congruent. So we're going to write that down. Angle J is congruent to angle GKH because they're corresponding angles. Angle I is congruent to angle GHK because they are corresponding angles. Therefore, your proof statement is true because of the angle postulate. Alright, another example. Make sure I get the entire example on the screen. You are given that MN over PR is equal to, that ratio is equal to ON over QR. So those two sides are proportional to one another, and you're given that angle N is congruent to angle R. And we need to prove that the two triangles are similar. So you start your proof statement. You have the statements on the left and you have the reasons on the right. Your first statement is going to be that these two sides are proportional. How do you know that? It was given to you. Next, you're going to write the angle N is congruent to angle R. And how do you know that? It was given to you. And in fact, they gave you enough information to prove your proof statement. So your proof statement is true because of the side postulate. Yes, I know these are easy, but this is how you start so you kind of remember how to do these. You're given that angle S is congruent to angle W. So that's this initial information that I color-coded orange. And you're asked to prove that triangle SUV is similar to triangle TUW. You start your proof by writing the statements that you know. You know that angle S congruent to angle W, it was given. But you also know, even though this is not given to you, now if you look at your paper, I wrote this in. But we know that these angles are congruent because they're vertical angles. So you need to write them down. Angle SUV is congruent to angle WUT, vertical angles. Now you have enough information to prove your proof statement. So you write it down and you say that it is true because of the angle postulate. Lastly, you are given that AB, this line, is parallel to this line right here. And you're asked to prove that triangle ABE is similar to triangle DCE. You start your proof by writing down what you know. We know that the lines are parallel because it was given to us. From the given statement, because they're parallel, that makes these corresponding angles and these corresponding angles. So you need to write that down. Angle A is congruent to angle CDE, and angle B is congruent to angle DCE because they're corresponding angles. You now have enough information to prove your proof statement by the angle-angle postulate.